welcome, gentlemen, with me here on stage. We are going to be talking about the sustainable finance and whether it is or it is not essential for the industry to move on and prosper more even in the future. So I would like to start with a question for both of you, gentlemen. Perhaps Dr. Attiga, I'll start with you. COVID has forced unexpected changes to the industry, and it has been, challenging. In your view, how important has the pandemic been for the evolution overall, and can we call it maybe a revolution or for sustainable finance exactly?
Thank you very much. First of all, to the organizer, my dear friend, Dr. Ahmed, for the kind invitation to be in this very distinguished forum, and also on this distinguished panel. COVID really is one element of a combined effects that have hit the world for the last 2 years or so now. We called it in APICORP in one of our literature as the complex crisis that included a health one, that included a collapse of the oil prices in a very, very important period, and all the economic and financial impacts of this composite crisis. So it has accelerated actually the need and the urgency for sustainable financing as one element of transformation in the energy sector, since we're talking about this sector in particular. It accelerated this need. The importance of sustainability in general in this region, and I'm going to talk more about this region and bring my examples back to the region, has started before COVID, that's for sure. And it's embedded overall in the overarching SDGs, UN SDGs, particularly the energy element of it. However, COVID, as I said, has accelerated that, has made both financial institutions and institutions who need finance very aware of what they have to do in order to take advantage of this transformation, be it in cheaper cost of capital, be it in technology efficiencies, be it in all kinds of improvements in how they do business in order for financing, since this session is about financing, to be available at a sustainable and in a different format, in a format that empowers companies that embrace ESG in all its manifestations to be able to take advantage of that.
So it is, the COVID pandemic has some positive impact on the industry.
Sure.
Do you agree, Mr. Mutlaq?
Yeah, unlike Mr. Attiga, I'm the other side. I'm the borrower.
Yes.
He's the lender.
Yes.
So from our side, what we've seen, it's going before COVID, the ESG. It has accelerated the program, but what we also would like from his group, the lender side, is we don't want to repeat what happened back in the late 80s, early 90s. I was borrowing even at that time, and with the Kyoto principle. And some of the financial institutions, unfortunately, jumped prematurely on it. And let's face it, we are a capital-intensive industry. I cannot change my ethylene cracker to something else. If you put $1 billion, $2 billion right in the ground, there's nothing you can do. So we need some rationale, we need some patience to give the industry time. The industry, as Dr. Attiga said, it has moved. ESG has been going on since 2018 or before, so it's been moving. If you take the E, we, the chemical industry, are leader in the environmental. Every chemical plant in Saudi I'm aware of was built, even back in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, was built according to Southern California EPA standards, which is the toughest and the best in the world. So these plants are, honestly, quite good plants. طبعا they're maintained and so on. So they meet a lot, most, if not all, the environmental. The S, which is social sustainability, we are doing a lot of the social before in the form of helping society, charities, creating jobs, doing things. So the chemical industry was doing a big part of that. The sustainability now is high in our agenda, and our philosophy is to do more with less. We recycle everything as much as we can. We do our best in saving energy, minimizing our carbon footprint. And so the industry is doing a lot. Of course, we've moved to the G, the corporate governance, some years ago, especially in the Gulf. We have the GCC BDI, Board Director Institute, and we promote corporate governance, transparency, gender diversity. So a lot of the things going on. COVID accelerated a lot of these.
Naturally.
Especially in the digitalization side, digital world, and actually, because we all know the supply chain situation, containers shortage globally, it actually forced a lot of us to look at the reliability of our suppliers, what they're doing. Can we also buy more locally versus importing? Because if I buy from somebody next door, I don't have to worry about the container. So that done a lot. So there is a lot of change in our side.
Perfect. So you talked about suppliers, but what about investors? How can you increase like the projects and the technologies? What type of projects and technologies can you have to increase the competitive advantages in the eyes of investors?
Of course. I mean, we as the chemical industry been in efficiency and doing more with less for a long time compared to any industry. But let's face it, we are a hydrocarbon industry. We're gonna have carbon footprint. We're gonna have energy consumption. That's just the nature. And I don't think anybody in this earth can live without chemicals. Even our own bodies as humans are made of chemicals. We like it or not. So that's the reality. So we are moving into more improvement. If you came to us 20 years ago, talk about energy efficiency or recycling, we won't probably listen to you that much. But if you come today or 5 years ago, yes, we are developing technologies that better for the environment, better for the society. We're doing a lot of things, but by the nature of this industry being capital-intensive industry, it just takes time. It's nothing can happen overnight in this industry. That doesn't mean it's not moving. It's moving, but it's going to take a little bit of adjustment. That's all I'm saying.
Great. So, Mr. Attiga, or Dr. Attiga, my next question is for you. As you work closely with the leading global institutional and sovereign investors, what are the investing trends observed by you in the GCC region, particularly, both as a whole and in particular for the energy and chemical industry?
Certainly, I think the region is seeing an unprecedented evolution in the energy sector, in particular, for a number of reasons and for a number of factors. Renewable and non-conventional sources of energy has opened the door quite wide on the countries of the region moving in that direction. And there has been many successes in that regard, both from oil producers and oil importers in the region. And this is, I think, only in the last 7 to 10 years at max, which is really a very remarkable progress. You have take it from Morocco to Egypt to Jordan. These are oil importers. To the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other countries from the oil exporters side have done really real progress in this regard. And when it was done correctly, everybody came, in the sense that financiers came, both commercial and multilateral.
It was attractive to all sectors.
Absolutely. Developers came because it was done correctly. And particularly in countries where the fiscal space was tight, public-private partnership schemes have evolved in order to make these investments in the renewable and non-conventional successful. And the petchem and the chemicals in particular, I think Mr. Al-Morished is more suitable to talk about that than myself, but I think that there has been some slowdown in that subsector a bit, partly because some of the mega projects have completed. And there is a need now to take on a new cycle of mega investments in this regard. I think also the COVID implications has affected the progress. However, this region in particular will remain the main source for the feedstock of the chemical and the petrochemical industries, which is the crude oil and the gas. And given that advantage, I think this particular sector will see a evolution in the next phase towards more investments. Also on the other side, we have seen now investments in digitization, investments in energy efficiency, investments in all the elements, the enabling elements that would take this sector into a more sustainable framework.
Wonderful. It's nice to hear so much optimism given the circumstances we are living today. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the sector, like, you know, our industry is driven by feedstock.
Exactly.
And it's no-brainer for most of us who's been over 30 years in the industry. The more you go down, the more you need to be close to market. The more you go up, you need to be close to the feedstock source.
Makes sense.
And since we have a lot of feedstock, but let's face it, we don't have the population of China or India. So we technically have our strength, our economic strength, in the upstream side.
Great. Dr. Mutlaq, I want to take you back to ESG. You spoke earlier in
Sure.
your answer about ESG.
Yes.
Do you think that ESG is the goals of ESG, is it a risk mitigation strategy or a driver for change in the industry?
It's actually, in a way, both. I think it's really a change driver. ESG is not new, you know. It was kind of put together, but the A and the S and the G, they were there before. We were doing a lot of things. Maybe we did not call them at that time corporate governance, but for sure, we were doing the environment, we were doing the sustainability and social.
Enough to satisfy investors?
Yeah, we are a good citizen of the world. You know, we live in the cities, we breathe the air, you know, so we're not bad people. we are part of the society. So yes, of course we take care of it. And now it's kind of got all together more of a holistic approach of ESG. And it's a driver for change, and it's good. And I like everything else. We need to go and do it right, and not over speed the car and have engine problems. So you need to do it slowly. I mean, we've seen what happened in Europe with the electricity situation when they rushed into renewable. It's great to have renewable, but you also need kind of a transition.
So you think you're going in the right phase and speed?
I think we're going in the right phase, and I see some places in the West, in Europe or something, sometime maybe they go overboard, and then they will go back. And I think ESG is a driver for change. Also a risk. It's becoming also, frankly, in our industry, a risk mitigation.
In what way?
And it forces boards and management, C-suite people, to look onto their carbon footprint, to care about what the funds are looking at. For example, 2020, there were over 500 billion US dollars in ESG funds that buy shares or sell shares based on the company ESG. And now these funds have actually performed better than the S&P 500. So actually have done well. So we, in the company side, reacted to these things and start to do our things slightly better and better. And we start to see our supplier, are they really good? Are they doing their part in things? Our customer, we're helping our customer the way to use our product and to use it rightly. If you're in fertilizer, you don't want the farmer over-fertilizing, even though it serves your economic purpose, but it's not good. So we try to train those people to use it wisely. So yeah, it's becoming both ends of the equation.
Okay, great. Well, Dr. Attiga, I want to talk to you about the, APICORP's launched recently Green Bond. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Can you shed some light on how this impacts the GCC chemical and petrochemical industry in general?
Sure, I'm glad you asked this question because it gives me the opportunity to demonstrate how an Arab multilateral financial institution with petroleum in its name, the Arab Petroleum Investments Corporation, owned by the 10 Arab oil producers, have successfully launched a green bond a couple of months ago. And what did it take to reach this achievement? First of all, we at APICORP, as the only energy-focused Arab financial institution, saw the potential of proving to the rest of the world that this region is serious about sustainable financing. However, to do so, you have to prove it. And the first step we did was to design the ESG framework and policies for APICOR and convince the investors out there, hard-nosed ESG investors, that they should believe in this potential. In designing this framework, we did not shy away from saying that the energy transition requires a balanced approach between sustainability and diversifying the energy mix with non-renewable sources of energy, but also with maintaining the hydrocarbon and the fossil fuel potential of this region. I always say wherever I'm asked that the last barrel of oil will be from this region. So that's why the emphasis is on this balance in any ESG framework that this region should adopt from any institution, public or private. And this balance means that we want to do petroleum industries in all its manifestations, but we want to do it cleaner, and we want to do it greener, and we want to do it with the aim of low carbon. This is exactly how we sold it to the investors, who we were approaching for buying our first ever green bond for a financial institution in this region. And the results were actually exceeded all our expectations. We wanted a $750 million issuance. We received 3 times oversubscription of that amount. 93% of those who bought the APICOR paper were from outside this region, not among the friends and family that know APICOR. They came from the US, from Europe, and as I said, hard-nosed ESG accounts. And had they not believed in this framework, again, from an institution owned by 10 Arab oil producers, I don't think they would have even touched it. Secondly, the pricing also. We priced this paper at the lowest ever cost of capital for APICOR, 40 basis points, which is very, very close to some of the lowest prices that this region has seen in any issuances. Why am I giving these features? I'm giving these features to say that when you do it right, you will get investors to believe you and to subscribe to this premise. The challenge, however, now is to put your money where your mouth is. The proceeds have to be used in the manner that the Green Bond Framework and the Sustainability Framework dictates, both from us as a financier and also from those who will receive the money in order to fulfill the sustainability or the green framework. In APICORP in particular, before issuing the bond, we have also ramped up our investments in the renewable and non-conventional assets by 500% over the last 4 or 5 years. It now constitutes about 15 to 17% of our total portfolio. We will commit to put over $1 billion in the next 2 years, again in sustainable assets. And by that, I don't only mean renewables, but also cleaner and greener hydrocarbon investments, bringing the right technology for them, and establishing this balance and how the transition should be considered.
Well, I wanted to ask you if you think it's a good or bad idea, this framework being submitted with competitors coming in the market, but I see how strongly you believe in it. So rather, I'm going to ask you, do you see it as a competitive advantage for you?
Certainly. I mean, as I said, we put our money where our mouth is. We have now to show that this region is serious about taking this forward. Our portfolio, as I said, already includes assets in that regard. Our pipeline for using the proceeds of the...
so you do sell it as a competitive advantage?
Yes, we sell it as a point of strength. Yes.
So, Mr. Mutlaq, I want to ask you about, again, the pandemic giving us the opportunity and more ambitious goals in the field. What is your advice for sustainable investment to the region and global industry to, future-proof and create more sustainable world?
Absolutely. Again, like we should do it and do it right and logically, not a propaganda like this PR kind. For example, you get a lot of people in the West especially about the electric car and green. Okay, fine. But what happens if that electricity in that car coming from a coal-fired power plant? That's not green. But unfortunately, the propaganda, the media doesn't tell you that end, it just tell you the electric car, doesn't tell you what stuff coming from. So I think sustainable finance coming from our lenders to us, the borrowers, is driving the industry in the right direction. And I'm glad to see what Dr. Attiga is saying. You need to do it logically, you need to do it methodically, you need to do it right. You don't force a capital-heavy industry to change overnight. It's just going to take time. And we should not be influenced and say hydrocarbon is bad. We're not going to live our life for a long time without hydrocarbon, let's face it. You know, 1 ton of cotton for people who are pushing polyester out of the clothing business costs 10 cubic meter of water. 1 ton of PET costs you 1 cube. But do you get this out? You hear it? Honestly, unfortunately, we don't hear it. All we hear is this: polyester is bad and cotton is good. But we're not getting that. So we, on our side, is putting sustainability. Our new projects are done. We recycle a lot. For example, we in Tasnee produce 2 million acid-lead car batteries. Saudi Arabia does not have mining for lead. So where do we get our lead? From recycling. We recover batteries that have been thrown away, collect them, crush them back, recover the polypropylene casing of the battery, put the old lead into a smelter, bring it as fresh lead, and then produce a brand new battery from the old battery. Not only you're making a business, but you're also saving the environment, because we all know lead is a poisonous metal. And therefore, you're actually taking it from being thrown away in a landfill or in the desert or somewhere, and putting it back to use again. And we do it again and again and again. So our industry is really responding very, very positively. If you look at what we did, you know, at one time the throwaway plastic was bad plastic. A pandemic came, that plastic became good plastic because nobody wants to touch something twice.
Yeah.
All the medical, from tubes to injection to everything, people don't touch twice, only once. So who saved the day in the pandemic was us in the plastic and packaging industry. We're the one who delivered the stuff. So that's something that we should look at it and not overreact and jump into, like I gave an example, the Kyoto Principles back in the late 90s, early 80s. You know, we have to take logically, and the industry is ready for change. It just needs adjustment, time, just needs something. But it's good. I mean, we always strive to do more with less. Less energy, less use of raw material, promoting good citizenship of Earth, reducing our carbon footprint. So this is all in the right direction, absolutely. But it has to be done right, an industry given adjustment time, not being pushed into a corner as happened in the past.
And being pressured perhaps by the media or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is an industry of $6 trillion. We're not talking about small things, we're talking huge things. You know.
Well, you know, the aspects of ESG that are being focused on more are the gender balance as well as reducing carbon emissions. And it will take, you know, unprecedented action, as you mentioned, collaboration and social shifts to achieve them. Mr. Mutlaq, what strategies are you at Tasnee putting in place to achieve these? Are there any priority area you're focusing on when it comes to gender, you know, balancing and the reducing carbon emissions?
We do. We have already now. First of all, about 3 years ago, we started establishing our sustainability report. So Tasnee annually issue a sustainability report showing our footprint. For example, I know our carbon footprint in Tasnee is 0.7%. You know, 0.7% of the total footprint of Saudi Arabia. And if you look at the footprint of Saudi Arabia as a country, it's actually one of the lowest. Because if you go into Europe and you go into America and you go other places, China, forget China, because they have high coal use, you find that there are a hell of a lot more than us. But you find so much noise focused on us for God knows what reason. But actually, our footprint is less than a lot of other countries out there. So Tasnee done that. We start to reduce it. We have found out, studied, that 30% our carbon footprint actually comes from plant unreliability, flaring. So that's an easy target. So we are now going over that. But ultimately, we'll go into the stacks. This is where CO2 comes from combustion into furnaces and boilers and so on. But that's our next step, because that will cost money, need capital investment. We'll come to my friend here to borrow some money. Hopefully he gives us 40 pips, because that is really good. I would love to get that kind of margins.
He's laughing. So.
Yeah, I couldn't get that. So we will do that. And when then in gender diversity, you know, Saudi Arabia really came wide open for the gender diversity only in the last 2 years. Okay, there were ladies in the schooling system, hospital, some of the banks, but a lot of us in the industry really went big into gender and hiring females. The last, I would say, 15, 16, to be honest. So we are promoting that big time, and we have great Saudi ladies in the market, highly educated,
and
highly
they have
serious.
equal opportunities.
Absolutely, because the underdog, you know, when you are the underdog, you want to show you're better than the big dog. So, you know, that's what happened. So these girls come in with a very determined things to be actually better than the boys. I have an incident a few years ago, I will say, with Fawaz, our CFO. We have a few girls in the finance and account, and one of the girls came asking how many invoices the boys process a day. Okay, Fawaz or myself didn't have the heart to tell her.
Okay.
Because the boys' average was like 120, 130, and she was doing over 300.
Wow, now they all know.
So,
now they all know.
you know, that's the reality.
Yeah.
That's the reality of life. So we are pushing a lot, but of course, to see the ladies in the C-suite and all that, it will take time. So they just enter really serious the marketplace in our industry. So they have a way to go, but things get faster and faster. What it took Mutlaq Al-Morished to get 25 years or something, it's not going to take them that long because life is moving faster and things becoming, you know, shorter and smarter and all things. So yes, all of us are pushing for, especially in the BDI, which is not Tasnee Board Pursuit, we are actually promoting girls or ladies in the board rooms. We want to see more women in the boardrooms. So this is going
really
on. Companies, all of the Saudi company, chemical company I know of, are hiring big time, maybe, you know, the female sector.
Great talents, I would say.
Great
Both
talent.
genders.
It's the 50% of the society, let's face it. There is no plane can take off with one wing. You can't, like it or not. So.
That's true. I want to hear from Dr. Attiga what he thinks about this as well. How is it going in your part, in your field, about the gender balance and carbon emissions?
Sure. Just before I answer this question, I remembered in relation to what we have been saying about the balance in the energy transition, that only 2 days ago, the IEF and the IHS of all organizations have issued a report, fresh, saying that there is a huge decrease in the investments in the upstream exploration in the whole world, down from 500+ billion to 300+ billion investments. And if this continues, they predict in 30 or so, there will be a crisis. So this only goes to prove that the balance has to be struck and has to be struck very, very closely and efficiently. Back to your question, I think Mr. Mutlaq has shed light on the gender element of it, particularly in Saudi Arabia, which is extremely impressive. When I started my job at APICORP 4 years ago, there were only 3 female employees in the bank. Now we are over 20, 25 gender diversity achievement, and most of them came, of course, from the Saudi Arabia, the host country of APICORP, and I fully agree with him that the skills and the potential are huge. In this sector in particular, and I'm just looking quickly around the room, I think more gender diversity have to happen. It has to do with the nature of the industry. However, I think it's going in the right direction. But I want to answer your question in a more holistic manner. Gender is only one element of a holistic system for ESG. It requires so many other things as conducive factors to be in place. Relationship between the private sector and the governments, the role of the governments in enhancing this ecosystem, if you will, be it through regulations, through taxation, through subsidy removals. Many of the countries, as I said earlier, are facing very tight fiscal spaces, which means public-private partnerships are needed, particularly in the financing side. Then you come to the social side, particularly things related to labor and so on. So it's a holistic system. It will take time. Transition is not going to be immediate. Transition has to be proactive, has to be inclusive, and has to be tailored also to the specifics and the characteristics of every region or every institution. That's how I would like to see this ecosystem working for the benefit, for a win-win results for everybody. Gender, however, is a key element in this ecosystem.
As it should, time always is key to achieving any big, massive change. So my next question will be directed to both of you. I would like to start with Mr. Mutlaq. The crisis has shown the collaborative efforts is required amongst the entire scale of stakeholders. So in the economy, to solve the most difficult problems, being leaders in your respective fields, what are the important lessons learned, and how do you aim to apply it to future global changes and challenges, including the period we are living today, very real threat of climate change?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. What happened really, one of the pluses COVID gave us is that we have to cooperate, even though we compete. Even in Jubail, which is one town, but different companies, we technically compete. We compete on employees, we compete outside in the international market. When COVID came, and if I have a shortage of catalyst or of spare parts, I have no problem going next door to a SABIC or a SIPChem or Chevron guys, Cheminol, and getting some spare to help me go through. And I do the same thing, quid pro quo. So really sharing even skills, high rotating equipment engineers or something difficult to find in the industry, we can share. So the COVID and crisis showed us that we can learn and do, even though compete, but also collaborate. So that was one of the lessons. The other
that's
things,
exactly what we talked about with Dr. Fernando earlier on.
yes, exactly. Because, because of the, the antitrust, anti-competition, all these in the past, people were afraid to talk to each other. COVID came and forces all of us to start talking. We're not discussing prices or anything, but at least help in your spare parts, help in your supplies, help in getting your product out. If I'm going to bring a big ship, but I don't have enough material, guys next door to me, they're going to use that space. So it became really a more collaborative and cooperative between different competitors in the past, quote unquote. So that gave us. It also gave us that we really need to look locally versus importing. Maintenance, resources sharing, contractors, and so on. So that kind of the positive things that we have seen. We also, what we have seen, we all in the chemical industry, what we call have recovery plan and business continuity. These things were designed for situation where you can lose your feedstock or utilities, but actually came in handy during COVID. We have command centers that were activated immediately inside each company or chemical plant that were designed for business continuity, but came in handy in this case and saved the day. So that is something that we learned, luckily. We learned all, the Zooms and the Teams and, WebEx and all that stuff that we were not doing before. It will also show us we can save costs. We don't need to go to a business meeting like we did before. A lot of work, some will still be done physically, like today and yesterday, but some can be done through remotely. We can do a lot of things. We also then have learned that we can have employees at home and they'll be as productive as in the office. If you came to Mutlaq Al-Morished 3-4 years ago and asked him if you will have employees working at home, he would say, you're crazy. But we have seen that we actually can do it, and we as a business people, we have to also take advantage. Why do I rent a huge space if I can have people working at home? That's an attractive thing. I save even janitorial service. I think
it's a win-win.
Exactly, electricity, all kinds. So yes, there is always a silver lining in every dark cloud. And so this is a silver lining. And
it's always nice to look at it that way, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Dr. Attiga, what about you?
I think Mr. Morished has shed light on the details of this transformation that has taken place as a result of the crisis. And I think he has put the finger on exactly what has happened. More broadly, however, I think the crisis has disrupted elements that were never disrupted before. For example, normally the crisis used to come from the side of the supply. In this case, it came from the side of the demand, and the supply as well by the disruption of the global supply chain systems. some ramifications of the crisis are still going on. I mean, you look at the inflation, global inflation now, and other related areas. So I think we're going to still be living in that mode of crisis. However,
especially with the climate change issue.
Exactly. However, with adaptation and with efficiency and with doing things differently, just like the examples my good friend Mr. Mutlaq has given.
Very nice. Thank you, gentlemen. I would like to end this session now, and you've been great guests, and I enjoyed having this conversation with you, and I hope everybody enjoyed this discussion. I don't know if we're going to be taking questions through Slido. Yes, I guess we are. So we have a question saying, would both gentlemen please say a few words about ESG rating agencies and their influence on industry financing?
I can take that. ESG and the rating agency, I think, you know, we've done back 2007 or 6, 7, the rating for SABIC with Moody's and S&P and Fitch. It's not as developed as a financial rating or bond issuance or sukuk issuance. So I think it will take some time, and we have to be careful not to end up with some of the stuff like the ISO 9000 and all that. It became a business. So we have to be careful. It has to be done logically. And I think we don't need somebody rating us. We can do it ourselves.
But do they have any kind of influence on investors in decision making?
So far, not as big as the funds who are in ESG, these big funds, 500 billion and so on, American, different, about 30 or 40 of them. These guys, what I call active shareholder, activist shareholder, they're more. The rating still, I would say, it's not fully developed. Because what is ESG meant in Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates is different than what's meant in Houston, Texas. So you have to put the element of regionality, cultural into the equation. And therefore, it's not financial, where the balance sheet is the balance sheet, regardless where you are. You know, this is something that social, I look at it different than somebody. Sustainability, somebody look at it different than somebody. You're a desert or you're a forest, you know, it means something. So I think rating it will come, like what happened in the financial world, in the beginning of the S&Ps and Fitch and Moody's of the world, was not as developed as today. So I think, but we just have to be careful not to be used to make money. I mean, you need to do it for
you need to be
good
smart and
things.
careful.
Yeah, you need to do it for the benefit and the goodness of the society and the good for all of us all, not because some rating agency makes more money.
Off of your shoulders. True. What about you,
That's
Dr.
the danger.
Attiga? Anything you want to add?
I fully agree with what my good friend has said. From APICORP's side as a financial institution, as he also said, the rating has to do with the strength, the financial strength of the balance sheet. In that case, I'm happy to say that APICORP is the only Arab financial institution that enjoys 2 AA ratings from Fitch and Moody's in the whole region, and the 3rd rating from Standard & Poor will come very, very soon, and we expect it to be at the same level. But on the ESG rating, for our bond issuance that we talked about earlier, we had to do a ESG rating of the expected impact of the green bond. And that helped us quite a bit in selling the bond when we went to the market. But I must say that the rating agencies, the ESG rating agencies, have understood this balance that we have been talking about, that has to apply to this region, as my friend said. And by understanding it, they rated the expected impact of our paper to be advanced, which is the highest rating that they can give, allowing us to go to the market and successfully issuing the paper.
Thank
so
you.
it works, as I said, in a way that has to be tailored, but also win-win.
Thank you, gentlemen. So the next question says, would both, it says, how can governments support or collaborate with private sector to enable ESG as well?
And what?
The government and private sector collaborate to enable ESG.
Government is a regulator, basically. And you don't want to under-regulate, you also don't want to over-regulate. I've seen it. I lived in America for 20 years, and I've seen over-regulation in places like California.
And what it does to that?
It does stifle the business, it increases the cost, and sometimes, honestly, it's just illogical. So you need some sort of regulation for sure. Safety, for example, in the early years, was driven by regulation, forcing the industry to behave. And okay, I'm not saying we're angels and that there are mistakes in the world. happened, and the regulator caught up, and then the industry responded. So you need some sort of regulation, but it need to be logical regulation to encourage. I'm a believer that you need to get people way to do it themselves before you come and regulate them. So you'll be careful. The regulation can work opposite of what actually intended for. But there are certain.
Can they collaborate, the private sector?
Absolutely. No, we do. We collaborate. Always collaborate. Definitely. I mean, in Saudi, I'm happy to see a lot of the government agencies like CMA and others, before they issue a new regulation, they actually consult the affected party, or the industry, or banking, or whoever, which is great, because who knows the business better than the people who are in it? To come regulator from a bureaucratic side without knowing the business is not good. Not good for anybody. But there are certain things that regulation needs to trigger. I was chairman of Sabiq Capital in Holland, 2012-13, and the Dutch government issued a ruling that 1/3 of the board must be females. I mean, we're talking Holland, huh? That's a very open, very equal society. If the Dutch do that, and we in the Gulf and other places want to encourage the boardroom diversity, some sort of regulation is needed. As if, you know, I go back to my old school of nuclear engineering. A nuclear reaction is the biggest on Earth, but it doesn't start by itself. It needs a source of ignition. Once you ignite it, it will sustain itself. It will go on. But therefore, regulation in this case is needed to ignite the process. Once the process is gone and there, then you can stop it. Same thing with the ESG. If it's, once you see it there, then it's okay. But if it's not there, then you should make some regulation.
What about you, Dr. Attiga? Would you like to add anything?
I'll answer the question that's addressed to me here, because I think Mr. Mutlaq has described the relationship between public and private sector. From a financing point of view...
If you would allow me just to state the questions for the audience. The question says, can you please give some illustrative examples of investments APICORP could consider using the green bond proceeds? Please, Dr.
Yes, the green bond proceeds follow the green bond framework that we agreed with the investors on. And this has a definition of where the proceeds can go. In this case, it goes into renewable, it goes into waste management, and it goes into green buildings, and all other associated sectors. That's in regard to the green bond framework. However, APICORP, as I said, already has investments in renewables and other sectors related to this objective.
Well, the next question is, I suppose, for both of you. Your top 3 sectors for investment in the next 5 years. Would you like to go ahead?
Top sector for what?
Your top 3 sectors for investment in the next 5 years. Tough, huh?
First, you know, we are an industry for profit. So whatever we do, we must make money. If we don't make money, ultimately, even if you want to do good on earth, all of it, but if you're not profitable, you cannot maintain. So we want really to invest in things that are good for us and good for the environment. It's not a one-way street. Profit with abusing the environment is not good, and no profit and promoting the environment is also not good. We will do that. We will do to energy and recycling, the big investment that we are doing, like I gave the example of the car batteries. And of course, we will promote the gender diversity and things in our business. These things will be for sure.
And any sectors, any top 3 sectors you would want to invest in the next 5 years?
But we're a chemical company.
Circumstances change.
I've seen in my career over the years companies getting in trouble by getting to something they don't know or they don't. Stick to the network. My points, if you're a chemical guy, stick to your stuff that you know. Don't go into automotive or electronics or something. If you want to change complete business, go and do it. But for me, in the industry, I would stay with my netting, the business I know, and, you know, in Arabic speaker, say, you can't do everything and be good at it. You have to do few things and be good at them.
Focus. You have to remain focused.
Yes, you have to remain focused. Thank you, Father. That's like, I want to remain focused. I'm a chemical company. I'm a commodity business. I'm going to stick to my low cost, good quality, and in time delivery. That's it. Nothing else.
That's clear. Dr. Attiga, what's your top 3 sectors?
We in APICORP issue an annual MENA energy investment outlook for the next 5 years. And the next one will come out in March. We have seen in the last few reports that we have issued that the power sector has taken almost 1/3 of the energy investments in this region, in particular over the last few years, with an increased private sector participation in these investments. So these two elements speak to what we have been talking about regarding the role of the private sector and regarding the energy transition to diversifying the energy mix. I would also think that there will be more investments going forward in the hardcore oil and gas sector. Let's not forget that. Let's not let this transition euphoria take us away from realizing the basics and the fundamentals.
Yes.
And the oil and gas sector in this region will require new investments. As I said, the report that was issued yesterday points to this, and there's no other region in the world that can bridge this gap of upstream investments other than this one. Other associated investments, I think, will happen in the energy efficiency and the energy technology space in order to enable the sustainability objectives.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed and Mr. Mutlaq, for your time and answering all these questions. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shukran.
Thank you, audience, for all this interaction and questions you have submitted.
Good to see you. Finally.
If you